Okay, hello everyone. This is Mike Cleveland, and I'm with a new friend, James from Texas. And James, we're quite a ways away. You're down the south, I'm up here in the north, but we're together in the Lord. And thank you so much for joining with me and coming on to share your story here.
Sure, it's great to be here.
And I was talking with you earlier, and I read your testimony, and it's really powerful. And I just have appreciated what God is doing in your heart and life. And you have finished, is it the Purity Boot Camp course or the Purity
Yes.
follow-up?
No, the boot camp course.
Okay, good. All right. Very good. And we had agreed to discuss beforehand Galatians 2:20 and maybe 21 if we get to it. So I'll just read that here. Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. James, as you look at that verse, the first part, it says, I have been crucified with Christ. And I think what Paul means there is his old self, his religious old nature self had died with Christ. And, for me, my old self revealed itself in the areas of impurity and pornography and drunkenness and deception and things like that. And I was in it for many decades. Maybe, how about you? You just share a little bit about what your old self was like and what your journey was.
Yeah, so I've been struggling with this since I figured out through some counseling that it's been uh, about 12 years old, and I'm 54 now. So
Wow.
yeah, it's been way too long. I mean, so 40,
Mm.
42 years of dealing with it. I mean, I would have times where it wasn't a problem, but then most of the time it would come back, and then always the anger and rage and guilt that went along with that, and then the hurting of my family members, and so it's been way too long, too much time given to the enemy.
Yeah, and that's a typical story, isn't it? How anger and rage go along with impurity. I was the most angry person I knew. I just had so much rage, was basically shaking my fist at God. And,
Yeah,
you know, in Proverbs 19, it says that the wicked will ruin their own lives and then blame God, and I think I
yeah.
was doing that for many years. So you actually got exposed to this at 12? That is very young. How was that? What was that through? Did you just
Well,
find some magazine somewhere, or how'd that happen?
I did, but I had blocked. So I was actually sexually abused at and I think it was around 12, because I completely blocked it out until my mid to late
I
20s.
see.
It came back, and then um, my counselor had one of the counselors that I went to actually wanted me to prosecute. It was a cousin that did it, and I just assumed that the time had lapsed on it. But just this past year, my brother, so I have a brother that is um, 16 years younger than me, was actually abused by the same guy, and
Oh, wow.
so brought it all to a head this past fall. He did press charges, and they arrested him, and he admitted to it, and and actually even blamed all of the victims, and so he's been indicted, and all of this, and so that actually gave me a whole lot of, I hung on to that of being, is giving me an excuse of saying, well, I've been abused, and therefore, I have something to go back on. But, going through this class, and then counseling that I've received, good counseling. I've received some counseling that it wasn't so good. But I think I wrote in my testimony about how this all dovetails together. A friend of mine um, shared with me some teachings on dealing with habitual sin, and pornography is definitely that. And so then I got hooked up with some biblical counseling, some ACBC counseling. So they're 12 sessions and they're done. I mean, it's not a lifetime thing. It's turning you back, memorizing scripture. I mean, basically just very, very similar. And that's where I even heard about the course. So I had not heard about your course, and had gone through this, set up a plan, an action plan, and started the counseling. Very first session, he asked if I had heard of the Purity Boot Camp, and I recommended that I sign up. And I'm wanting to get better and was all in. So signed up that night and got started, and have gone through it. And then that really dovetailed with where he was going. I mean, it's almost like I'm sure he's read through this stuff. It's almost like it was put together in tandem. And so been
that
very
was just
good.
God's rescue plan for you.
Right.
As you think about this statement here that Paul makes, I have been crucified with Christ. Do you see the truth that your old self died with Jesus? The reason I'm asking is all the other, worldly methods. I think you mentioned 12 steps, or I'm not sure if that was you, but other, attempts to get free will focus you on yourself. Well, according to the Bible, that self died with Christ. And so how do you understand this passage? Are you seeing it this way, that your old impure self actually was put to death on the cross with Christ?
Yeah, that completely relates to what I've seen and kind of the new. So I've been a Christian since even before I got into any of this and before any of this happened. And so, and I've been very involved with church, know a lot of scripture, even taught some at church. And the gospel has never been so alive to me, and the cross of Christ has never been so important. I always thought of it as a historical fact. Okay, that's where we start, but then we go on and we go past that. And now I'm not going past that. I'm daily, going back to the cross and staying inside of the cross and staying in the, warring in the shadow of the cross, and just continually. So I've got this renewed love for Jesus and for an awe of what he's done. And not that and so I don't want to downplay my previous life, but I can completely downplay my previous life, so to speak. So I just said the same words twice, but I hope you understand what I meant about, I'm not downplaying Christianity and my previous experience with it, but I'm damn wanting to underline how unfree I was. I was not living. And so because of that, I've very rarely witnessed, because I didn't want what I had, much less. I mean, what kind of a salesman am I? And so times of guilt, whenever you feel like you need to be witnessing and you try to tell people about Christ, it's just fake, and it's not. And even the counselor that I've been going to, he said, biblical witnessing is the simplest thing in the world. Tell people what God's done for you. And that just hit so hard, because previously I didn't realize that I didn't feel like God had really done anything for me, because I'm leaving this life of guilt and shame and anger and just, so I didn't feel like telling anybody. Now I'm telling people, co-workers and things, when they say something negative, I just turn it right back around to what God has done in my life. And so I've actually have something to share now, neighbor, just talking to him. And it's very, very exciting. And it's very neat to see that my old self that life has been crucified, because I've been through, so I went through 12-step program 20 something years ago. And then recently I've been in Castamonia and going through, and I've been to Celebrate Recovery. So I've been through 3 different programs, and the focus. So I just had settled on that I was always going to be an addict. So you constantly, every time you go to say something, you have to remember to say, "Hi, I'm James, a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, porn addict." And so I thought it was very funny. The last 3 meetings I went to, one of the guys, he got confused, and he kept I thought it was a slip the first time, but then he did it the every time he said it, he said, his name was James also. He said, "Hi, I'm James, grateful porn addict and believer in Jesus Christ." And so he had
Oh
it
boy.
switched around, and everybody kind of
Oops.
chuckled, and so man, I
But
just
they do that does it speaks to the fact that they teach once an addict, always an addict.
hmm
And I think for the world that's true, because you don't have Christ and you don't have freedom. If the Son sets you free, you're free indeed. And the way he does it is to take us to the cross and show us that my old self that would view pornography and get drunk and lie and all those things died. Literally, in God's eyes, James, your past person died.
right,
And with Christ, he was up on the cross with him. He died with him. And so now it's not that I'm trying to get better and trying to sin less and try. No, I died.
right,
Now we still have flesh, so we still have the remnants of that old man, and so we can still sin. So it's not that we are now perfect and don't, no longer stumble or whatever, but to view our identity as having died with Christ is very freeing, as you're describing. And I
yeah,
appreciate, James, what you said about the cross, because as you know, most people believe the cross is for salvation only, and then get on with it. Go into the deeper teachings,
right.
leave the cross behind. What would you say personally to people who have been taught that the cross is only for salvation, and then you leave it behind? What words would you have for people who might believe that way?
Yeah, well, I had so I've never heard that, actually said, but I definitely lived that way. I mean, I just felt like that was just a fundamental, almost something that since I was saved so young and went through catechism in the Methodist Church and these things, that's for junior high kids and whatever. And then now we need to get on and, like you said, well, we have endless meetings and talk about the depth of different things while everybody's just waiting to get out of there and
Mhm.
go back to do whatever they were. And so I would say that the cross is fundamental. I mean, the gospel, and as we read through, and so as we've been going through counseling, we've been going through just underlining all of the so reading through the epistles, 2 per week, and then going underlining every command in there. And man, it's like reading the Bible for the first time, and it's all about
Mm,
the gospel, and what
amen.
God has done. And then no excuses, not giving us excuses, telling us to do what he says to do what God
Yeah.
commands, to do what God uh, and all of that just seems so. I just glossed over all of that in the past
Mm,
because I couldn't do it. But now
right.
going back to the cross daily, um, so it's not that I can do something now that I couldn't, but I do it in Christ's strength. So I don't want so
Mm,
to sin. And
mm,
so I'm like you said, I'm not perfect now. I'm not, um, but the motivation to desire that is dead. And so it's it's just amazing. So I would say that anyone that says that the cross is, that's elementary teaching, and to go on with it already, is that you're completely missing the power and the importance of, and it's not some, you know, name it and claim it, or kind of meditate on it and try to, visualization technique or something like that of, okay, concentrate on the cross if you get in temptation. That would be that would be more of the same of the 12 step and all of the psychology. It's not that at all.
yeah.
It's it's the power of the Holy Spirit is what's there.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well, and that's what Paul says next. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me.
Yeah.
And so we were raised from the dead with Christ, and he, by his Spirit, lives inside of us. And there's the power we were missing. There's the supernatural strength that enables us to just turn our back
Yeah.
on impurity, and to be glad to be done with it. I've never been happier, James, since I've been free from that stuff. It was killing me,
Yeah.
and felt like an anchor that just weighed me down and was pulling me down all the time. Well, that anchor was cut at the cross, and I rose from the dead, and I'm free.
Right.
It's a big difference. What do you personally see here where it says, the so he says, Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God. What is that like for you? How do you experience the truth of this passage?
Um, so the biggest thing to me is by living in the faith is the not being weighed down, but being turned loose. I mean, there's a freedom, and like you said with about the anchor, that really connects with me of um, because I've it's given me the ability to go on. So in the past, I would, if I'm tempted with something, or if I get to a point where I'm frustrated or don't know what to do in work or something, I would then start to flounder and uh,
Yeah.
wallow around in my own misery and guilt, and then end up going and doing something I shouldn't do. So it's been so freeing now that I'm getting stuff done. So I just, you know,
Uh,
I don't go there. I just go ahead and either get with the, so it's almost like, like the idle hands or the devil's workshop kind of thing.
yeah.
And so living by faith and walking by faith is just going ahead and doing whatever. And so it's like doing projects around the house, getting things done, making phone calls that I don't like talk on the phone much, so I don't call people and face confrontation. So just
Yeah.
getting it done. So it seems like the simplest thing. It it's almost like um, just take care of business, and
Hmm.
and then things fall in line. But there's the biblical principle in that, because it takes the faith for me to do those things, because I want to sit there and think about it and overanalyze and try to find excuses and why I can't do it, and because I'm a failure, and then just go down that whole path. And then by not even going there, by just going ahead through faith, stepping forward and doing what needs to be done. So it
Yeah.
does sound like a lot of self-help, but it's not through my power that I'm doing that.
That's
So
right.
I'm trying to relate the results of what I've seen, not the way I've come through it. This is what I see having stepped through it. Looking back at it, looks like, well, I'm just taking care of business, doing whatever needs to be done next. Keeping things clean, um, but it's that's the effect, not the cause.
Yes, exactly right. That's important to say. And then what's also important is what you said earlier. You have the same stressors.
Hmm.
It's not like when you get free that your stressors change. You still have your same circumstances that you
Oh
live
my
in.
gosh.
It's right. It's just that
And
we deal with them differently.
what's been worse, I mean, the things that have broken, just ever since we've been going through this. So I, coming home from counseling, ran over a 6x6 log in the road, took out two
Oh,
of my car. So my wife was following me. We hit it with both cars, took out two
oh
rims on my
wow.
car, knocked out the alignment on her van. So that
Oh,
took me a couple of weeks to get fixed. You had to get towed home. Then the window got broken out by the lawnmowers at work. So I'm at work last
oh,
week, and the window gets broken out. I mean, so just the hot water heater went out. I mean, just
oh,
everything. And yet,
oh.
so we know that it's not, so stuff's like twice as much or three times more than just normal life. And so we really see it as a testing of what are you going to do, and it's not
Now,
weighing me
what
down.
would you have done in the past? Now, would those have been the accumulated stress and pressure that would have caused you to go do porn or something? How
Yeah,
would you have
and
handled this in
rage.
the past?
Yeah, so definitely would have fallen into temptation when I'm alone, and then rage. Um, just blaming everyone about everything that's breaking, of why is this happening, and instead we just, I mean, it gave us the opportunity to witness to the
Mm.
truck driver about how good, I mean, the tow truck driver, how good God is, and all
Oh,
those.
wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of neat.
Uh, oh, that's wonderful. So that is such a 180-degree change from what you would have done, how you would have responded in the past. And that's
Right.
what I was saying. We have the same stressors, or in your case, double up on them or triple up on them. I mean, wow, that's a lot to happen in a short period of time. But the reality is that you're free now. Christ lives in you. You died to the old, you've risen to the new life. So the power is in your own death and your own
Right.
resurrection. So now Christ living in you, you respond entirely differently. And that's beautiful to see. Are you married, James?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does your wife, has she known of these struggles, and what are things like now?
Yeah, well, so this has been an ongoing struggle. We've been married for 32 years. I better get that right because it's not 1989, so it's been 34 years. And so, man, time flies. And so
Oh boy.
I've had this struggle. So she's been very angry about all of this. And so that's been the point of contention our whole life. She's very excited about the change. And she's going to counseling, so we're going to counseling together, and because she's done counseling previously, but this guy's meeting with both of us, and um, she he's asked her to forgive, and and then a lot like something like I don't remember which meeting it was. Where at the end of one of yours there was a video or a recording where you and your wife had were talking about forgiveness, and about, not about a cheap, where the world would say you gotta keep that, you gotta make them pay. You can't let them off that
Yeah.
easily. And
Mhm.
he's really been working with her on that, and so I've seen changes in her, and she's definitely seen changes in me. A couple of weeks ago, she said,
Mhm.
she told me, where's my husband? What have you done with him? And so, and that was one of the better moments. I mean, so
Uh,
I've had some times where it wasn't so good,
yeah.
but to hear that at least once, after 32 years of always being the
Uh,
doing wrong and everybody being mad.
yeah. Well, it goes along with the passage we're reading. When she said, what have you done with my husband? This
Right,
says exactly what has been done. I have been
right,
crucified with Christ, so that the old me is no longer alive. And
right.
she's
Yeah.
seeing that this is the result of the work of Christ in you. I don't know if you have your Bible there. I thought we'd finish with verse 21.
Uh-huh.
Do you have yours handy,
Yeah.
or I can just read it?
No, I have it there.
Verse 21. Yeah,
Okay.
Galatians 2:21.
It says, I do not nullify the grace of God, for if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose.
So you could put in there where it says if righteousness could be gained through the law, you could say through your own self efforts, through 12-step groups, through anything that you do, right? Where I'm going to turn over a new leaf. I'm going to do better. All those things. If you could really do that, then Christ died for nothing. And
Yes.
so he's in essence saying the cross is the solution for righteousness, because when Jesus died, James, your sin was taken off of you completely, and his righteousness was put on you. And so you are fully righteous right now. And this is not something you worked for or obeyed your way into or
Right.
stepped your way into. This is just the power of the gospel, and you believe it and you live it. As we come to a close here, what would you say, James, to people who are where you used to be, who can't ever? Because I remember you told me that you couldn't think of yourself as ever being free, right? That
Right.
you thought that you would always be an addict or something.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that that was the best and that's all I see in Castamonia and Celebrate Recovery is, the people that leave there, they leave and fall away. It's so just assumed and had settled into that I'm always going to be known as an addict and always a, damaged goods, so to speak, and completely the opposite of what we just read right here. That
Right.
if Christ died for no purpose. If righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. And so that's something that I've really latched on to is that if if that's the best that there is, then man, what a waste of God's Son to come and to
Yes.
pour out His life for us to go around defeated and having to introduce ourselves as, hi, I'm James,
Mm.
a porn addict, and being known as that, and just completely focused, turning our focus off of helping others. And that's one of the biggest things that we can do wrong, is to turn inward. Because selfishness and all that's all taught about in church, and even the world accepts that through the church. But then what the world has gotten into the church is turning away from because all of this recovery stuff has just completely settled into the church, into a whole lot of
Yes.
counseling, and
Yes.
it denies the power of Christ. And so
Yes.
what was amazing, whenever we started this counseling with the ACBC, they gave me a little book that was written in 1971, Christ and Your Problems, a little 20-page book. I didn't even notice when it was written, and it talks about how it's all about, we're all in this together. We all have similar problems, even with Christ, and that it takes the church confronting sin. And so much of the church, and this was written in the 70s, which just surprised me because I was just a little kid then, but to see, because it's even gotten worse now, I would say, because
Mhm.
you go to church and nobody wants to, oh, well, they're just a sinner, and so you've got this quote unquote problem, and so you need to go off over there instead of just confronting it. No,
Mhm.
it's sin in your life, and
Yeah.
Christ died for sin, so He's got the answer.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I've held on to all through all of the counseling and recovery and all of that is, I don't see this in, I don't see Paul getting people saved and then sending them to 15 years of counseling. I mean,
Right.
he puts them to work
Exactly.
spreading the gospel right
Yes.
then. And so, I mean, the power
Yes.
of God has to be in there somewhere. And
Yes.
so,
Exactly right.
yeah,
Yeah, I think what you said is really important, because if you're thinking that you're damaged goods, then you have an identity that is one who always fails, and I'm just going to be this way. And so your identity is what drives what you do. Our identity is who we think we are. Well, in Christ, who do I think I am? One who has no sin on me, one who has the righteousness of Christ on me. So I'm blameless
right.
and holy. And so I don't, in myself, of course, I'm not any of those things, but that's my identity now. So I begin to walk that out in my daily life. It affects my choices. It affects how I live. And I can tell it sure does you as well.
Right.
So James, I think you've been very encouraging to people who would listen to this. I think that you have the solution of the cross of Christ. And that is where all the power is. Romans 1:16-18, the I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it's the power of God unto salvation. And so we think, well, yeah, salvation. No, 1 Corinthians 1:18 says, for us who are being saved, it's the power of God.
Right.
So for Christians, for us who have already become Christians, the cross is still the power of God for us.
Yeah.
And I think you're experiencing that. So anything final that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you so much for pushing this, putting this together, and for promoting it. I mean, this is life changing, and
Mm,
I don't want to give you credit as a man. I want to give you credit
amen.
as a son of God and as a disciple of God in
Mm,
putting this out here. This is the truth of God, and by standing and promoting this, I mean, you're setting people free. And so I really
mm,
want to commend you for that, for your work in doing that.
mm.
And uh, it's just it's life-changing.
Well, thank
So
you.
thank you.
I do believe fully that all glory goes to God, as you do. So we don't take any of it. But thank you for saying that. Thank you for your testimony, James. I appreciate so much hearing from you and seeing your absolute change of life.
Right.
I'll always remember the statement from your wife, "What have you done with my husband?"
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So thank you for coming on and sharing with me.
All right. All right.